Okay, welcome. Uh, Hello again. Today we're going to be doing a lead code problem called three consecutive odds. Problem number 1550. It's a pretty simple one. The reason I chose this one is just because I want to talk a little bit more about how to use modulus, which is, if you're unsure what that is, it's this sign over here, which is present in basically all of the languages. Um, but before we get into that, let's look into the question. Given an array, integer array, return true if there's three consecutive odd numbers in the array. Otherwise, return false. So it's a pretty simple question. It's not a lot to it. If there are three consecutive odd numbers, which in this case there are none, it's even, odd. So there's three even, which means this false. And then over here, there are three odd numbers right over here, 5, 7, and 23. These three are odds. How do we find odd or even numbers? That's with modulus. That's how it's done. Um, so before I start solving this, I would like to give you guys some examples. So what modulus does is basically it tells you what the remainder is of an operation. So if I do, let's start with a simple one. Let's do 2 divided by 2. I know it says modulus here, but think about this as a division. So if you divide 2 by 2, the answer is 1. It's a whole number, right? So the modulus of that will be 0 because there's no remainder. So if you run this, it's going to be 0. Same thing if we do 4 divided by 2. Right? It doesn't have to be the same number divided by itself. 4 divided by 2, it's also going to be 0. Here you go, 0. What if it's 5 divided by 2? So we know that 5 is not divided by 2. Of course, it's going to be 2.5. But modulus doesn't give you the decimal. It just gives you what's remaining. So 2 can be divided by 4. Sorry, 4 can be divided by 2, and then the remainder is 1, right? So 5 modulus 2 has to give you a remainder of 1. Let's do a couple more examples. It doesn't have to be 2. You can do 3. We know that 9 is divisible by 3, so it'll give us 0. But what if we do 11? 11 is not divided by 3. 9 is, so the answer is going to be 2 because there are 2 numbers remaining. Here you go, 2. So how can we use this modulus to check if something is even or odd? So basically, we know that if a number divided by 2, if that number is divisible by 2, that means that the number is even. If it's not divisible by 2, then that means the number is odd. So let's choose a number that's divisible by 2. 50. 50 is divisible by 2. So it's an even number. It'll give us 0. Is 73 divisible by 2? It's not. So it'll give us a remainder. And it doesn't really matter what the remainder is. It could be, actually, if it's divisible by 2, it's always going to be a remainder of 1. So we can just check this in an if statement. If the remainder is 0, then that means that it's divisible by 2. If the remainder is not 0, we can just write it as not 0. That means that it's an odd number. So let's go to the answer here. Let's start writing. It's a pretty simple question. It gives us an array, so all we have to do is iterate through this array. Or dot length I plus plus. So we're gonna read through this array, and then we're gonna check if, well, it asks us for 3 consecutive odds. So what we're gonna do is start at the beginning of the array as I showed here, I chose int I is equal to 0. Then we're going to check I plus 1, and I plus 2. We're going to check these three indexes, I don't know, at the same time. And if that index, and if this if is ends up being true, then we return true, else we return false. However, so one thing I need to change is, what if this is the first iteration, it's going to be the second iteration, it's going to be the third iteration. But once I get here, this has to be the last iteration, because if I try to uh, look at these two numbers and there's no third number here, it'll give me an index out of bounds. So I need to do array length -3, because in my if statement, I'm going to be looking at three different indexes. So if array at position I modulus 2, which means, sorry, modulus 2 is not equal to 0. This is checking if the first index is not equal to 0. If the modulus of the first index is not equal to 0, that means that it's odd. But I need to check two more. So, and it's going to copy and paste this two more times. And now I need to change this to I plus 1 and I plus 2. So if it is, return true. I don't need a brackets here, because the if is gonna just return whatever the first line is underneath it. So I chose not to write a bracket here. And then I need a base case where we need to return false if it's not so, else return false. If this condition is never met, just return false, which just means that there are no consecutive odds. There are no three consecutive odds. So let's run this. Accepted. That's perfect. Okay. I got true on the second one, false on the first one. Everything's running smoothly. It's a really easy question. Really easy. You just need to know how the modulus works, and then just check three indices at a time, which is what is asked. If it says four consecutive odds, just do it. Just do the if one more time. Thanks for watching, guys. If you guys learned something, have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comment section below. And yeah, have a good one. Thanks.